Okay, so thanks to everybody for tuning in live. We're going to get started on this presentation. We're going to talk about the effects of the coronavirus on Canadian immigration. It's a presentation by myself and Sonia representing Visto and SMB. We'll get into more details on that in just a second. Wanted to run everyone through a quick agenda of what we're going to be talking about. So first and foremost, I will do a quick introduction about Sonia and I, the two people that are sitting up in the top right-hand corner of your screen right now. Then I'm going to do a little bit of talking about the effects on individuals as well as travel as it relates to Canadian immigration. Sonia is then going to talk about the effects on companies and considerations that they should keep in mind with regards to immigration. And then at the end, we're going to stick around for a Q&A. So if any of you do have questions, feel free to either save them till the end and type them in the Facebook chat, or you can just type them in as they come into your head. And what I'll do is I will scroll up through the Facebook chat to hopefully answer all of the questions. So thanks again for tuning in. A quick introduction, who we are. My name is Josh Schachnow. I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer and CEO of Visto. We are a free online platform and we help international students in Canada and skilled workers from all over the world navigate the Canadian immigration process. You can learn more at visto.ai if you want to check us out. Sonia, it's an absolute pleasure to have you tonight. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Josh. I am the principal partner at SMB Business Immigration. We're dealing with corporate immigration cases. Majority of our clients are corporations in Canada or international corporations that are bringing foreign workers to Canada to work on their projects.
Awesome. And thank you for dedicating your Friday night to be with us, Sonia. And then just really quick, we do
Thank
want to
you.
mention our quick disclaimer. This is a presentation. We want to give you guys the best and most accurate information possible, but it is, of course, for general information purposes only, not legal advice, should not be relied on as such, and does not create a lawyer-client relationship and all of that fun stuff. So wanted to get that out of the way to begin with. Again, thanks for tuning in. This might be a Friday night for some people, might be a Saturday morning for some of our other users, so we really appreciate you tuning in. And let's jump right into the fun stuff. So how does the coronavirus affect a whole bunch of things with regards to Canadian immigration? I'm going to start talking about how it relates to individuals. So we have a few topics to cover. Number one is if you've been approved for permanent residency. We will use some short forms tonight. PR is permanent residency. So if you are outside of the country and you've been approved for PR, what you're going to have to do is, obviously, in many cases, you might not be able to land in Canada, and that's okay. What you're going to want to do is fill out the Canadian immigration web form, and we are going to provide links to all of these resources in the comments on the video. So what I'll do is at the end of this presentation, I will provide links to everything we're about to refer to, so you'll know where to find them. So if you have been approved for PR from outside of the country and you're unable to travel to Canada, you're going to want to fill out the web form to tell Immigration Canada that you're unable to travel to Canada. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have to wait until you are able to travel to Canada, fill out the web form again. So fill them in with the information given your circumstances, why you couldn't travel and when you can travel, and Immigration Canada will follow up with specific instructions on exactly how to manage your landing in Canada. If you already are in Canada and you have a landing appointment, they've actually all been canceled until April 13th, not surprisingly. So what is going to happen is instead they will be moved to phone calls. So again, if you have a landing appointment as an approved PR, your meeting, if it's before April 13th, will be moved to a phone call and you'll be contacted by Immigration Canada by email to set up that time and date. Now, it's really important, whether you've done an online application or a paper application, that your contact information is correct, right? So that means your email and your phone number. Because if they're not, obviously you won't get these communications from Immigration Canada. So again, you're going to want to fill out the web form. We will provide the link in the comments below to update your contact information. Lastly, if you've been approved for your PR, but your confirmation of permanent residence, your COPR, has expired, again, you're going to turn to the web form, explain why you weren't able to travel to Canada to do your landing, and then also fill out an additional web form when you are able to travel to Canada, explain the situation, and Immigration Canada will give you specific instructions on what to do from there. So that was a bit of a mouthful, but there's a lot going on for if you've been approved for PR and don't know what to do about it. If you've submitted an application from outside of Canada, your application won't be rejected due to coronavirus circumstantial reasons. So for example, if there's a delay or you're unable to complete a certain step, that might be getting your biometrics or submitting a medical exam, they won't reject your application specifically for that purposes. In fact, they've given additional 90 days in most cases to complete those steps. So you can keep that in mind as well. Just again, remember to track all of the information and provide that information when you do submit the documentation. And if you do want to withdraw your application, given the circumstances, some people may or may not want to be traveling to Canada at this point. Again, fill out the web form, explain the circumstances and that you'd like to withdraw. And if your withdrawal request was put in within 24 hours of your application, in most cases, you'll be completely refunded all of the filing fees. Next up, if you're about to apply for express entry, so this is the skilled worker PR application, all online is express entry. The regular restrictions in terms of how much time you have to submit the applications do not change. So when you receive an invitation to apply, you still have to apply within the regular 60-day processing limit. However, if you are missing documents, you can be granted an extension. What you have to do is, again, submit the application within the 60-day period and include in your application a letter explaining how you weren't able to prepare certain documents, and include that letter in your application. Because what CIC is doing is granting 90-day extensions for almost all of these applications, but you have to make sure you still get the application in within that 60-day period and then explain in the letter why you need the extension. Once you have then collected those documents, again, submit them all via the web form. Make sure to mention which application they're all referring to. So include your UCI, include your application number, and all of that good stuff. And that applies to express entry applicants only. If you need to travel to Canada urgently, Canada has some instructions if you're in China, Iran, or South Korea. And the instructions depend a little bit based on whether you're applying for a temporary permit, so a study permit, a visitor visa, or a work permit, or a permanent residency application. So we're going to provide a link, again, another link in the description with the exact instructions, because depending on whether you're in China or Iran or South Korea, and also depending on which type of application you're applying for, they request that you either submit a web form request or email the embassy directly. So instead of spelling, going into each detail and taking 5-10 minutes to do that here, we're going to provide the links so that if you do fit into those situations, you know exactly what to do or who to email. Keep in mind, all of these are processed on a case-by-case basis, so there's no guarantee that an urgent processing would happen in your case, which is why you want to make sure to thoroughly explain it so that you have the best chances for that to happen. And lastly, if you're unable to leave Canada, there's a few things you can do depending on your status. So if you still have status in Canada, whether that be as a visitor, a student, or a worker, you can always apply to extend. So you can apply to extend as a visitor. You can apply to extend as a student or worker if you still remain eligible to be a student or worker. Or if you're no longer eligible to be a student or a worker, you can apply to change your status to a visitor. Those are all still standard application processes. And again, you'll find exact instructions on how to do that in the links that we provide at the end of the presentation. If your status has expired, you can also apply to restore your status. Again, that's still the same application process as it normally is, and the instructions will be provided in the guide that we provide at the end. as well as if your status expired more than 90 days ago, you may still be eligible to apply for a temporary resident visa. Again, similar process as per usual, and so we will have links to all that in the comments at the end of the presentation. The last thing I'll mention here is that in all of these scenarios, you definitely want to explain your situation and the reason for your extensions and all of that stuff. Lastly, a quick note, I mentioned this quickly about the PR meetings, but pretty much everything in person has been canceled. So citizenship ceremonies, tests, PR and refugees appointments, they've all been canceled and or moved to phone calls, and more details on that are in the links as well. Really quickly, also wanted to touch on travel, because this is extremely important. But from the order that we were given from the government, the federal government, the following applies with regards to travel by aircraft. So if you're not a Canadian citizen and not a Canadian permanent resident, you're not allowed to enter Canada right now by aircraft unless you fall under one of the following exemptions, and we'll go through these relatively quickly because they're pretty straightforward. If you were only in the US or Canada for the previous 14 days, then you are still allowed in via aircraft. If you're an immediate family of a citizen or PR, so permanent resident, and the definition here of immediate family is a spouse and common law partner, or the dependent children of a Canadian or PR, or their spouse or common law partner, or the grandchildren of that citizen, PR, or their spouse or common law child. So just to make that a little bit clearer, because it's kind of hard to describe without a visual. If Sonia and I were spouses, let's say, and Sonia is a citizen and I am not, or a PR, I'm allowed to enter because Sonia, my spouse, is a citizen. Both of our children, whether we had them together or not, would be allowed in, and any of their dependent children, if they had any, would also be allowed in. If you're a registered Indian under the Indian Act, you're also exempt. That's pretty straightforward. If you are TRV exempt, so temporary resident visa exempt, so for example, US citizens would be exempt and their immediate family, so that goes back to the second point. If you are a French citizen who resides in Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon, Sonia, I think I pronounced that correctly, then you are also exempt. Awesome.
Yeah.
And there are also a few other exemptions. I'm not going to go through all of them. I think these are the most probably applicable to people that might be on temporary or permanent status. There are a few others, more related to kind of public health and safety, the Army, Air Force crew, things like that related to health. And again, we'll provide the link so you can see the exhaustive list on the official order at the link that we provide in the comments at the end. My last note before I hand it over to Sonia is that these travel restrictions are effective until June 30th as per the official order. And again, we will link to all of them in the comments. I'm actually going to start putting them into the comments because now I'm going to hand things over to Sonia to talk about the effects on businesses. Sonia, take it away.
Okay, so work visas. It's clearly an exceptional situations that we're going through right now, and it's pretty difficult when it comes to decision making for companies and a lot of individuals. On Monday, when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the ban on, temporary resident permit holders to come to Canada, essentially everybody thought everything is canceled. Everybody who has a work permit, visitor permit, study permit are not allowed to come to Canada first, which created a lot of, chaos for certain companies that are expecting or are, doing their business based on the foreign workers that are coming to Canada. However, 2 days later, on Wednesday, it was March 18, we learned that there's a certain exception to that rule, and that is for people who are coming through U.S. If they are permit holders, work permit holders, and if they have resided in U.S. for 14 days, they're still allowed to come through the border, either by air or through the port of entry, land port of entry. Just before I was getting ready today for this, putting things together for this talk tonight, I learned that there was an announcement by government that apparently all the work permit holders are allowed, study permit and work permit, are allowed to come to Canada. Obviously, things are very fluid these days. Things are changing constantly. I would say every day, every hour. So as of now, not the time that we're talking right now, it appears that all the work permit holders and all the international students are allowed to come to Canada. However, everybody who comes to Canada needs to be isolated for 14 days as a standard. Nobody is really putting any standard or any threshold on the self-isolation period. It's based on, it's sort of like people are trusting each other that, they're going to be self-isolating themselves. As of now, I'm not sure what will be the measures put in place by government next week. But right now, this is what's going on for work permit holders, which is a great news because a lot of companies, a lot of my clients, the foreign workers were stuck in different parts of the world, especially there were some in the US visiting their family members or were, down in the US for business, and all of a sudden this whole whole situation came along and they got stuck in the US. So it's certainly good news for them, for those people. There seems to be great flexibility the government is providing with respect to, extending certain deadlines or extending certain, time frames or timelines for different immigration procedures, such as biometrics. Right now, before, whoever that was supposed to do biometrics were given only 30 days to complete the process. Right now, government has extended that to 90 days because of the whole coronavirus situation. A lot of back offices might not be running as usual. The office hours are different, and all people are working from home. So and especially with individuals, they also might be affected somehow by this coronavirus situation. So, in honoring that, government extended the time frame to 90 days. Similar to LMIAs, the labor market impact assessments, everybody has dealt with it. They know that, typically, classically, the extensions, not the extensions, but the period is for 6 months on every LMIA approval. The government has promised to extend that also to 9 months. Again, understanding that the situations are different now and foreign workers might not be able to come to Canada on time. So that also has been extended. Like you said, there seems to be a great flexibility when it comes to, understanding the situation by federal government. The VAC offices and the port of entries, everybody's working from home these days. All the government, officials in different levels, whether being in ESCC, Employment Social Development Canada, or IRCC, Immigration Office, or VAC centers, or people at port of entry. I was told by Immigration Office 2 days ago that nearly, like, all the port of entries are nearly vacant and nobody's really working in the immigration offices. So things are a little difficult, and the whole effect is that all the applications on all the procedures will be getting a little bit longer in processing. And so when it comes to applying for extensions, when it comes to applying for work permits, everybody has to bear in mind that everything has, they have to give some specific timelines for themselves to apply for these applications. It is not going to be same as before for when it comes to in Canada extensions. What it used to be taking 2 to 3 months of processing in Canada, right now expect anything close to 6 months. So give yourself plenty of time before applying for extension. Same goes for every other process for LMIAs. If you're applying for LMIAs specifically under Global Talent Stream, which used to be only 10 business days of processing, it also gets extended. there's no specific timeline given by the government that, how long it's going to take for the LMIA or how long it's going to take for extensions as of yet. I'm sure that, they're going to come up with some sort of timelines in the next few weeks. But as of now, there's no specific guidelines. All I'm saying is that please, manage that accordingly. Make sure that you're not really falling into the trap of running short in time and then getting into the complications later of not being able to apply on time. One question that I've been asked since the beginning of the week from a lot of clients is that right now, if I'm not sure if the people that are in Ontario, they know that Ontario is going through the state of emergency. So a lot of people are working from home. Majority of people are asked specifically to work from home. So the questions that I had from clients was that, is working from home considered legal under the work permit? Whoever that has a work permit, it's actually a very interesting question, Josh, because and it kept me thinking about it for a while, and I had to, talk to immigration office and different connections that I had. Typically, whoever is working in Canada under a work permit, they know that, the location of work really is the certain location that the person, the foreign worker, has to work at. If there's any other multiple locations for the employer, it has to be integrated on the work permit. Now, if you were to ask me about 2 weeks ago whether working from home is legal under the work permit, I would have to say no. But because of the current situations, I'm pretty sure that government is also pretty flexible and that there is an understanding that, there's exceptional cases, there's unusual situation, everybody's working from home. State, the whole Ontario is under this, emergency situation. So I'm pretty sure that that's also, acceptable under the work permit. Again, there's no certain guidelines as of yet from immigration, but I'm pretty positive that that's going to be the case. In Canada extensions, I briefly touched upon that. So nothing has been really changed in terms of whether immigration office is accepting applications for work permit extensions, or whether even for overseas work visa application, whether they've stopped receiving applications. Everything is going as normal. The only thing is that the only effect, I would say, is that because everybody's working from home, because some people might not be working due to different reasons at this, situation, the timelines are getting extended. So you would have to, again, going back to my point, you would have to give yourself plenty of time when applying, and making sure that if you're communicating with your company, the company is also aware of the situation. If you're applying for LMIA, give yourself plenty of time and then plan accordingly. I think I covered pretty much everything. And obviously, if there are any questions, pop up the questions now. I'd be happy and glad to answer. And if there's anything lengthy that we can probably cover now, you're more than welcome to email me, and my emails are right there. I'm sure Josh is going to post that there. So.
It's a good segue, Sonia. Thanks for that, the in-depth explanation. That's it sort of for the presentation portion. It was a lot of kind of details that we did have to cover. So what we do have right here is our direct emails, so you can connect with me at josh@visto.ai if you have more questions. We are going to get to all the questions that have been mentioned in the chat in just a second. You can connect with Sonia directly. She's at sonia@smblaw.ca. You can also find out more about her firm at smblaw.ca. You can find out more about Visto at visto.ai. Again, we really appreciate everybody tuning in, and we have a bunch of questions now, Sonia. So I'm going to scroll up and start tackling them and ask for your help as well.